Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining us today. My name is Owolsai Rahan, and I'm a Policy and Markets Manager at the Long Duration Energy Storage Council. I'm excited to be bringing this webinar in partnership and collaboration with the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. We're going to be speaking about a very well-broaded and necessary conversation today, which is focused on unlocking the value of LDES. Co-hosting with me is my colleague as well, Francisco, who's going to be sharing just a quick take on the housekeeping rules and how we can all have a great session this morning, afternoon, and evening. Thank you so much. Over to you, Francisco.
Thank you, Gosha, and thank you very much for all the participants. This is a great opportunity to share about long duration storage. This is our second part of a series of webinars on the topic. On the first session, a few months ago, we discussed from the technical point of view about the importance and the need of long duration storage to enable higher shares of renewables. In this session, we will discuss from the regulatory point of view what is needed to make these projects feasible. And we're very pleased to have a great set of panelists and speakers, which will be presenting us from different points of views and from different region perspectives what they see as enablers from the regulatory point of view for the LDES projects. Some simple housekeeping rules. So for questions and answers, there will be a space at the end of the session. We expect to have a duration of 60 to 70 minutes, and the last 10 minutes will be dedicated to the questions. Please write your questions on the Q&A box, which is in the Zoom application. We will be directing the questions to the speakers. If the question is directed to a specific speaker or panelist, please make this clear, and we will try to address as much questions as time allows. Our agenda for today, so we will start by opening remarks from our host, the Long Duration Energy Storage Council and IRENA. Then we will have a presentation from the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator, RITA, giving the perspective or the point of view from RITA on these needs from the regulatory point of view for long duration storage. And then we will have our panel discussion with our speakers from different regions of the world. So to start, I will call Mr. Simon Ben Sarame, which is the head of unit of strategic infrastructure at IRENA. Simon, please.
Thank you, Francisco, and a very warm welcome to everyone today in this webinar. My name is Simon Ben-Maraz, and I'm really excited to join the LDES Council on this second webinars about this very important topic about there. And let me start by, I would like killing one comfortable myth that the main risk in the energy systems are intermittent renewable. But the real quantifiable risk today is actually intermittent fossil fuel. Since the 60s, fossil fuels have grown 12-fold and now supplied over 1/3 of the global primary energy. 3/4 of the world population lives in net fossil important countries, including 99% of European. In over 50 countries, and you see here on the slides, more than half of the primary energy is imported fossil fuel. This is not energy security. This is structural exposure. And the good news, and that's what we hear today, is that the physics and the economics of the systems have flipped. We now have the renewable potential around 100 to 120 times larger than the current energy demand and fossil production, and it's available in all regions. Electrons from local renewable can replace imported molecules at scales if the system that carries and balances them is built accordingly. And this is where our problem lies. Out of a record global energy transition investment last year, less than 20% goes into system enablers, about 50% into grids, and around 2% into the batteries, the short-term storage there. So we are pouring capex into generation while we're starving the grids and storage that can really turn cheap variable generation into firm and reliable power. So when someone tells you you can store a power well or renewables are intermittent and can replace fuel, it hides a more honest sentence. We haven't been willing to build the enabling infrastructure at the same time. My point here on the slide is that if you care about energy security, and we all are today in an insecure world, the rational strategy is to reduce fossil fuel import dependence and double down on grids, on flexibility, including long duration storage. And we'll see today with the amazing panel, the bottleneck is not anymore physics. It is about where we choose to send capex and how slowly incumbents let the system evolve. The second myth here is that renewables are fine to a point, but beyond a certain level, often modest, the grid will collapse. This is something that let's say we have tried to dispel as a myth. Countries like Denmark and others are already running power systems with very high wind and solar shares while maintaining reliability. And you heard also that the attack on a renewable, for example, in Southern European, were dispelled by the people in charge of the grids. And this is not only because the wind suddenly became less variable, it hasn't changed. It's because system design caught up, interconnection, market design, flexible demand, and storage alongside modern grids. And IRENA works show what is coming. And you see here on the slides, by 2030 and 2050, flexibility needs multiplies a lot across daily, day-to-day, weekly, and monthly timescale. Pretending we can meet that just with legacy assets plus a thin layer of a 4-hour battery, it's just wishful thinking. A serious flexibility portfolio has 4 pillars: short duration batteries for intraday shiftings, fast reserve and replacing spinner's mass. With modern inverters, battery can provide inertia, frequency response, black start in a way the old base load narrative often refuse to acknowledge. The second pillar is interconnectors, that so we can share variability, as long as you don't have to assume that your neighbor is always fine when you are not. The third is demand-side flexibility, EV charging, heat pumps in buildings, data center load management, industrial load management, and thermal storage, which actually can reshape load factors and, when needed, relieve the grids. And therefore, the last one, this is why we're here today, long duration energy storage, which is a structural insurance for multi-day and seasonal events, Dunkelflaute, external import shocks, and protracted extreme weathers across the world. And we see that across the year. So the fossil fuel narrative says you will always need fossil backup. And I think we'll prove it today that the more accurate statement is that you will always need reliable flexibility. And that comes from a portfolio of technology that do not burn fuels every hour of the day. And long duration storage, LDES, is a piece designed for the edge case, the fossil fuel used to discredit the whole transition. So if we ignore it, we hand them the arguments. If we design it into the system, we remove the last talking points of this. The third myth, and I will stop here, is that people say we would love to build more storage, but it's just too expensive and inefficient. Let's give a reality check. 4-hour utility scale batteries, all-in capex today is around $125 per kilowatt hours. And the levelized cost of storage is about $65, based on real auction. So at those numbers, if you sum them up, dispatchable solar, so solar plus storage, come around $70 to $80 per megawatt hours, which is already competitive with new gas peakers in many markets, especially when you import LNG to power those. So cost, the story is important. Costs have fallen because when markets send clear signals, auction, bankable contract, visibility on revenue stacking, the industry is here to respond. For people who call storage too expensive while clinging to market design that refuse to value what storage actually does over time, this is what we need to work on. And this is also importantly on the planning side. System planners, energy planners know they need more long duration flexibility. The project exists. The technology families as a whole are maturing, but most markets still mainly price short-term megawatt hours and only a narrow set of ancillary services. And then the risk is that they could claim that LDES will fail the market test when a 20-year capex can be financed on a 2 years revenue visibility. So this is important and the subject of today. So from the IRENA side, our message is clear. The remaining challenge is not whether renewable and storage can replace fossil fuels in principle. The question is whether regulators, and we have here Rita talk about the role of regulators, market designers are willing to update the rules fast enough so that long duration flexibility is financeable at scale as part of the core infrastructure mix and not just pilots. We are over the pilot phase. And I'm happy also to pass now the baton to Julia because importantly, her voice is important. From this system view into the finance, markets and mechanics, we need the capital stack, we need to discuss about risk allocation, and we need to discuss about creating repeatable deals that turns LDES into deployed steel in the ground and also solving the issue we see today emerging in different regions, including, for example, in Asia, as we speak there. So I'll stop here. Thank you, and we're looking forward to engage with the industry, with the planners, with government to really put the evidence around the central role of long duration energy storage. Francisco, over to you.
Very much, Simon. Now, please, I would like to call Ms. Julia Sonder, the CEO of the Long Duration Energy Storage Council, to give us her point of view on this important topic. So, Julia, the space is yours.
Good day, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. It's great to be here. Thank you, Francesco, for the warm opening and fantastic job, Simon, as always. We love partnering with IRENA to really bring together the entire picture of facts and proof and case studies of just really demonstrating again the importance of how long duration energy storage can really help every community around the world. And as we're all feeling energy security, industrial competitiveness, and decarbonization are all now moving together, and countries are not just building clean energy power systems, they're really trying to build systems that are reliable, resilient, and scalable. Again, bottom line under all this, affordable. And in this shift, long duration energy storage is becoming essential, as you just saw from Simon's slides as well. We're enabling higher shares of renewable energy by delivering renewable energy over long periods of time. We're supporting reliability during extended shortfalls and reducing curtailment. And we're also enabling entire industries and sectors to come together to just gain more efficiencies. So long duration energy storage is central to making clean power systems actually work around the clock. But whether it fulfills the roles depend on something very specific, or you're looking at markets, policies, regulatory frameworks, these all have to recognize the value that long duration energy storage provides. And in our first webinar together, we did see real progress. We're seeing markets in the United Kingdom, China, Australia, they're all beginning to acknowledge the need for long duration flexibility. But recognition is not enough. The question now is, how do we move from recognition to investment? And because the challenge is no longer technical, it's really financial. And that brings us to bankability. So at its core, we see bankability coming down to two things: building the right capital stack, and then also creating a pipeline of projects that actually scale. We see three things that unlock this investment to reach those goals. First, predictable long-term revenue. Investors need visibility. Without stable cash flows, capital will not come in. And second, risk reduction. That means better performance data, standardized frameworks, and clear allocation of risk. Third, coordinated policy and financial support, a huge important component that really is foundational and so important to the topics being discussed today, because we need to see blended finance, long-term procurement, and market designs that really properly value reliability and flexibility, really giving long duration storage a chance to access the market, so again, could provide that value. But even with all of this being set up in the right way, there still is one gap that remains in many markets, and it's just the pipeline. We need long duration energy storage to really scale and not just via one-off projects. We need this steady flow in investment and secure policies to support investment rate opportunities. So we can really finance these projects and make it repeatable. And that's where the capital stack becomes critical. Public capital to de-risk, so public-private partnerships are crucial to the success of deployment. We need congestional capital to bridge the gaps. We need all different types of different kinds of capital coming to the table. We need private capital to help scale. Again, it's different partners coming together to really strengthen that pipeline so we can deploy long duration energy storage. And we want to create the confidence so that we have the clear market signals, the stable frameworks, and the consistency over time. Again, this is assets that last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So you want that continuity to really provide that foundational support. And as you heard Simon say and many others, we see momentum. We see projects deployed. They're advancing all over the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Australia. And as you've heard, technology is ready. The need is clear. The question is whether the finance can keep pace. And so we are really working and look forward to the discussion today on how we align these capital flows, how we reduce risk, and how we continue to build that strong foundation. We know that LDES works. We've proven time and time again that it provides enormous value for reliability and certainty, but now we have to create the right market conditions. And if we solve this, then we can really showcase how we deliver long duration storage in an affordable, reliable, and resilient system. And I think our message is clear from all of our organizations that long duration storage has a role to play. We need to finance and scale long duration storage to really provide that flexibility for all the essential services for national security and more to all the communities around the world. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today to really empower regulators around the world to really bring long duration storage as an essential tool to the toolkit of regulatory certainty. And look forward to the discussion and really excited to be here. So thanks again, IRENA, for your support. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. Back to you, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Julian. And also thank you very much, Simon, for this opening. Now we will continue our discussion with the presentation from RITA. RITA is the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator. Mr. Floris van Demdem from RITA will give us like the vision from RITA on topic before our fireside chat. So Floris, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present. Let me just get my slides on the screen. So yeah, I will be speaking about the regulatory dimensions of long duration energy storage and how RETA, the Regulatory Energy Transition Accelerator, can actually help support regulators to address some of these barriers that are unfortunately still in place on LDS. So a word on RETA. RETA is a global network of more than 60 regulators collaborating on advancing decarbonization goals. We work with a range of delivery partners to implement projects that support regulators, and the Secretariat of RETA is hosted at the IEA. I will be talking a bit more about what RETA does and how it can help address some of the challenges regulators are facing later. But let me first highlight the role of regulation to actually enable the uptake of LDES. So let me start with the why question. As power system decarbonize and variable renewable scale up, the nature of the challenge the system is facing is actually shifting. It's no longer about balancing the system within the day. Increasingly, it's actually about managing variability over multiple days, weeks, and even season. That's where long duration energy storage becomes so important. Based on LDES Council research, it's shown that we'll need to increase the amount of LDS on the system globally to 85 to 140 terawatt hours by 2040. And this reflects a structural need to manage prolonged periods of low wind and solar output, as well as deal with seasonal imbalances. The value this will bring to the system is significant. It can deliver up to around $540 billion a year in annual system cost savings, and these mainly come from reducing curtailment, avoiding overbuild of generation, limiting the need for peaking thermal plants, and easing pressure on networks, reducing congestion, for example. But this value requires significant investments. We need to see roughly $4 trillion cumulative between now and 2040 to reach this value for the system. So the question then becomes, if the value is so clear, why isn't this already happening at scale? Well, one of the main barriers that is still in place is regulatory and commercial. The system value of LDS might be high, but the value is not always monetizable in different market frameworks. And that brings us to the core issue. LDS is faced with not a single barrier, but a cluster of interrelated regulatory barriers. First, there's market design ambiguity. LDS doesn't really neatly fit into existing categories. It can exist as generation, demand, but also contribute to system infrastructure and the way you operate it. Most markets, though, are still designed around short-term duration, marginal dispatch, and do not really reward assets that optimize across multiple days. Second, there's remuneration uncertainty. There's no widely established bankable revenue model for multi-day storage, and current revenues, mainly coming from arbitrage and ancillary service, are not always sufficient to make the investments bankable, and that also don't always reward duration. Third, the regulatory classification. Whether LDS is treated as a regulatory asset, a merchant asset, or something in between, has major implications for risk allocation and cost recovery, and different countries are still experimenting with different ways of classifying LDS. Fourth, on capacity and planning frameworks, we see that many adequacy mechanisms were built around thermal power plants and don't properly capture the contribution of LDES, especially during system stress events. On the fifth one, risk allocation. Investors are currently exposed to a number of different risks, including price risk, volume risk, and in some cases also technology risk when the technology is rather new. And lastly, permitting and grid access, long connection queues, unclear tariff treatment, and in some cases even double charging of regulatory network tariffs create additional friction for investors. The key point is that all of these barriers are systemic and that they interlock each other, making investments much harder in these technologies. So what does this mean for regulators? Well, there are four key areas where we see regulatory clarity is needed. First, in market participation rules, we see that at a basic level, LDS needs a clear asset definition and the ability to stack revenues across different markets. Framework should be technology neutral, but also reflect the operational reality of multi-day storage. Second, on planning and procurement, current planning approaches often undervalue long duration flexibility because they don't fully capture extreme events or even duration dependent value. And there's a need to evolve the modeling approaches that operators are using, as well as procurement tools, including long-term contracts or capacity mechanism designs that recognize duration. Third, on grid access and permitting, projects need predictable and timely access to the grid and fair treatment of bidirectional energy flows and clarity on network charges. And lastly, on technology and safety standards, given the diversity of LDS technologies, standards need to be robust, but also flexible enough to enable innovation, including through tools like regulatory sandboxes. So luckily, regulators don't have to deal with all of these challenges on their own. As I said before, through RETA, we have connections to 60 regulators and a number of regulatory networks around the world, granting us access to almost all regulators out there. We also work with leading experts on regulatory affairs, through our network of delivery partners, which includes IRENA, and they are able to provide input on topics such as LDES. We also do a bunch of global thought leadership in processes such as the Clean Energy Ministerial, COP, or G20. And we have a proven track record with providing targeted support to regulators to help them through regulatory challenges. And we believe that if we as RETA provide capacity through knowledge, peer networks, or expert engagement, regulators will actually be better off to assess different regulatory framework options and make better decisions that improve investor confidence and bankability. This will result in a more conducive LDS deployment framework and support clean energy transitions. Within RETA, we work across 5 different pillars, which you can see on the screen here. And we believe that many of the pillars actually touch on LDS, including, of course, regulatory frameworks and flexibility, but even network planning and regional interconnection, making this topic well suited for as a cross-cutting topic for our peer learning and knowledge work. So RETA works through 5 different delivery modes. We make sure that regulators have all of the latest information through knowledge products. We grant them access to experts through facilitated sessions where they can engage with them. We make sure that peer learning happens across different regions, not only staying within Europe or North America, actually crossing regional boundaries as well. And then we try to disseminate our work broadly through webinars, our knowledge hub, and our newsletters, and participate in global events to make sure that policymakers also hear these important messages. And lastly, I just want to throw out a call for asking for support. RETA does a lot of different projects already, but we are always keen to hear if there's any challenges that you're facing as a regulator and you need help with. You can send us an email or fill out the form, and I will put the link in the chat. Always happy to hear if there's things that we can support with. So with that, I will hand back the floor. Thank you so much.
For your presentation and for giving us the point of view from Rita. Now we move to our final chat. I will give the word to my co-host, Ogosha. So, Ogosha, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi again, everyone. So we've heard from the keynotes and presentations on the groundwork towards positioning global energy transition that requires long-duration energy storage to participate in that. There was mention about how electrons are replacing imported molecules. The real problem is that we're not building enabling infrastructure like storage quickly enough to make sure that systems are ready to take on that extra reliability for when it's needed. One thing that I have realized is that clinging away from market design doesn't actually show the true value for LDES. And joining us today are experts across 4 regions who are going to be looking at how every market is necessary to actually make real progress. But one thing I would mention, and I think there was a link shared earlier, is that in our first webinar of this series, we actually spoke to experts from Ireland, the UK, Italy, and Canada who are already seeing real progress towards unlocking the real value for long duration energy storage. Now, joining me to ensure we answer this question on how do we use market signals or market design to move from pilots to more ambitious commercial and scalable deployment for LDES, our first President Doreen Harris from the New York State Regulatory Service, NRCEDA, who is leading the New York's clean energy and policy implementation. She's got over 20 years of experience working in public and private systems in renewable energy and the energy grid infrastructure. And she's previously led large-scale renewables and is now currently shaping New York's climate and energy agenda. Thanks, President Doris. Thank you so much for joining. Also from India is Namal Saju, who is currently a manager at the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, working on the Scalable Solutions team. And then joining us from Brazil is Dr. Daniel Dana, who is the Secretary General of Brazil's electricity regulator, ANEL. And he has a long career in energy regulations, and since 2007 has been working around tariff regulations in South America's largest markets. And lastly, from the Netherlands, we have an advisor on innovation and grid operations from SEDEN, which is the energy system operator in the Netherlands, to be speaking on her experience on data and analytical methods to make sure the Netherlands advances on the energy transition and their large-scale electricity use priorities. Thank you so much to my Fired Chat conversation speakers. We're just going to get into the bulk of it right now. Thanks so much for sharing this, Teresa. I will pass my first question to President Harris. And again, the floor is open for speakers to obviously take their turns, but also leverage on what's been said from other speakers. President Harris, you're aware that electricity systems integrate higher shares of renewables, as been mentioned from our keynote speakers, and the need is shifting from short hourly balancing to long duration energy storage. And we've seen this in New York policies. But my key ask now is, how is New York ensuring that existing market structures for capacity and ancillary services actually properly recognize the value of LDES? What has happened? What has that scenario mapping looked like? I would love for you to share with us today.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So glad to be here with each of you. And certainly New York is no different than what we're hearing globally, in which we see flexibility as a real central pillar of how we maintain reliability and affordability on the grid. And that's true whether we're deploying renewables as we are in New York, but also more broadly, foundationally, the electric system has to be able to balance supply and demand, not only hourly, but increasingly across longer timeframes across our entire system. And so I lead the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. We are also the state's energy office, and we just completed an energy plan that notes this very significant imperative. From our perspective, long duration energy storage, at least definitionally, is a technology that's capable of delivering power for roughly 10 hours to more than 100 hours, depending on the system design. And we see an increasing amount of long duration energy storage as part of our longer term needs as a state, particularly in the next 5 to 20 years. Today, we have one form of long duration energy storage in our state in the form of pump storage hydropower that provides that capability in New York. We have 2 pump storage facilities providing about 20 gigawatt hours of storage capacity, and really demonstrating what is necessary and possible to build upon. And so when we look at the deployment of long duration energy storage, it really is across the topics of technology innovation, long-term planning, as I've discussed, and procurement frameworks, as well as collaboration with our New York independent system operator to ensure that the markets, to your point, appropriately value these reliability benefits. And when we look at the longer term, we're talking about many gigawatts of this type of storage that we need to recognize. So NYSERDA integrates a procurement program as part of realizing that output. We have in each procurement a 20% carve out for projects with durations of over 8 hours. And foundationally, we are heading, as I said, to many gigawatts of long duration energy storage as well. And when we talk about the wholesale market structures, it is also the case that these mechanisms have to appropriately recognize and compensate the reliability and flexibility attributes of these resources. So we are working with the New York Independent System Operator to do just that, how these resources can participate in wholesale markets that value reliability services such as reserves and system balancing. And in fact, we are prioritizing resource adequacy in our state through marginal capacity accreditation, which basically shifts the market from valuing the presence, if you will, of these resources to rewarding the specific firmness a resource provides during the grid's most stressed hours. So this ensures that it values the presence of duration, bringing the multi-day gaps in wind and solar that batteries cannot, 4-hour batteries just cannot. We have basically 7 clean firm technologies that we are evaluating from an innovation perspective. And this evaluates 18 electrochemical, mechanical, thermal storage technologies really capable of meeting that need. And so together, really, when we look at this, the state is really combining market reform, procurement signals, and system planning to better integrate these resources and the flexibility that they provide.
Yeah, President Harris, we've been at the LDES Council kind of monitoring the updates from the state of New York, and it's been pretty impressive to see that coordination keep happening. And congrats on the segregation for elders and what that looks like. I'm going to go all the way across the world right now to India, which is in a different time zone to start with, but different market and capacity need. And I'll be calling on Nimero. And I think the ask I want to get to is so India's energy storage has obviously seen a lot of increase in deployments for renewables, right? We've had the announcements from the government to make sure there's a 1 million connection. We've also seen states like Karnataka already leading an installed storage capacity target, and Gujarat, the state of Gujarat, adopting a storage first approach to renewable energy planning. But I mean, from your experience on the ground, how are these state level initiatives, kind of what we see in the state of New York, but obviously in India, but how are state level initiatives shaping market signals for storage, and what lessons are currently taken from existing markets to actually scale long duration energy storage across India's power system?
Thanks for the question and thanks for addressing the time zone. And thanks for all the participants who are joining in from India at this late hour. So, if you see the way how storage has evolved, and again, like in New York, like in most of the world, traditionally storage was pump storage, even in India, right? Energy storage was formally defined in the rules and policies in 2022. And what we have seen over the last couple of years is basically a boom in, tenders for short duration storage, 2 hours, 4 hours, and now inching on the 6 hour mark. And this is like you highlighted, right? Primarily led by states which have a higher share of RE. So where India differs is that India, being one of the largest interconnected synchronized grids, still follows a federal structure in the way how power procurement and power planning is done, right? So you have states like Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra, which have over 20, 30 gigawatts of renewables in their grid. And thereby they are now driving the adoption of storage, right? So one of the first RFPs for short duration storage was from the state of Gujarat, which was a 2 hour storage. Now they have come out with 4 hour storages. They attempted to come out with a 8 hour storage RFP, or a draft RFP, which I think even the LDS Council was a part of that effort. So, a lot of the hesitancy around longer duration storage is around the technology, right, in India. It's about what technology to adopt, how do you evaluate different technologies, what is the need, because a clear need for, more than 8 hours of storage is not yet arrived today. But if you look at Gujarat, Gujarat expects to be at 80% of renewables as part of its generation share, right? Not just in capacity in the next 10 years, in less than 10 years. So that's why there are some of the states taking a leadership role in trying to try out different technologies. So we have seen solar plus 6 hour storage, which to Simon had mentioned, I think $85 per megawatt hour is what you're seeing solar plus LDES. At least solar plus 6 hour storage in India has now seen 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour, right? So the price, and India being a very price sensitive market, it's basically, can I find the lowest cost technology in order to deliver the solution? So there are innovative tenders coming around, maybe specifically around, say, vanadium flow batteries for 8 hours. So NTPC, which is the largest generating company in India, has done a 3 megawatt hour pilot for flow batteries, right? They're looking at an EOI for compressed air or liquid air kind of solutions. So again, we will see, certain states or certain bodies take the leadership role, and then it gets rolled out across the state, the entire country, right?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. We have seen that huge announcement from NTPC, which is just a signal for the price to market demonstrations for India, and we're super excited to follow that as the industry and as the LDES Council. Speaking on, I guess, pricing, now that you've touched on it, and technology, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Dana from Brazil. And Dr. Dana, so storage is recognized as an independent activity in Brazil now. That's a huge accolade. Congratulations to the Brazilian government. But what does this mean for market signals, and how does this new policy introduce structural guidelines on how storage technologies across board can operate, charge, get their revenue, and be compensated, which is very big. I mean, there's pricing and there's the revenue in Brazil's power systems. And I kind of would like to take into consideration the increasing renewables integration. And I guess Brazil has been well known for the variety of renewables intentions over there. But if you could just take us through how this new policy in Brazil has introduced a more balanced structure, if you like, for storage to participate and get its revenue. Dr. Dana?
Okay. Hello, Wash. It's nice to see you here. Nice to talk to other participants and speakers. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for everybody. Well, in Brazil, we are advancing in this topic regarding the storage systems. Last year, a law was approved considering the storage systems as an independent activity, as you said. And it's important for the regulations we are discussing at this moment. We started these discussions at ANEEL, the regulator, since 2023, and we divided our discussions into 3 cycles. The first cycle would set the first rules for storage systems. As Flores mentioned in a slide, we discussed the participation rules, we discussed the grid access and the tariff structure to pay and to use the system. And the law actually changed a little bit the discussion that was going on at the regulator, because now as an independent activity, we have to consider it, the storage system as it is. So the board is now discussing this at this very moment, how we will treat the storage system the best as it no. But it's not. It doesn't mean it is a barrier for the discussion. I think we are about to approve a first rule for the market. In terms of participation rules and grid access, we defined that the storage system will pay for. We have to access the grid and can. Okay, wait, hold on just a second to check my notes here. Well, it will can make a contract with the distribution company or the transmission company, and you can use the grid freely for free I'm so sorry, I'm confusing here. And you can use the grid. So sorry, Gosha. Can you and the storage can pay for the use of the grid. Okay, so that's the main point. And in terms of tariff, what was the discussion was, will the storage system have to pay for charging and discharging, or just paying for charging, or not, or just paying for discharging? At a certain moment, we were discussing that the storage would have to pay for charging and discharging, but now the board is discussing more in terms of just paying for discharging, and it means charging is not the main topic at this moment, and it influences a lot on how the business is structured at this moment. And this discussion is not ended yet. We're still discussing it on the board. Let's see how it will finish. I think in 1 or 2 months we'll have a result to follow and continue the discussion. That is the first cycle now of what we planned. We have 2 more cycles, the second and third cycle, and we'll discuss topics about curtailment and how it can participate on that. The Brazil market, as you said, is composed and very strong, based on hydro power plants. We are about 50% of our capacity comes from hydro plants, and so that's important, and it means a lot for us. But they also are very renewable. We are 85% of our matrix comes from renewable energy, so it means 25% nowadays comes from wind and solar, and it enhances a lot the challenge for it in the system.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dana. I guess with more renewables, the conversation still remains of where we're going to put all these renewables when we generate them. And curtailment is a different conversation. And I hope, if the audience stays tuned to what we're doing at the LDES Council, as well as RETA and IRENA, you'll get to see that at the end of the day, we want systems to actually make economic sense, as well as ensuring energy flexibility. Just from Dr. Dana's conversation on the idea of charging and discharging and double charging and new markets, because it is all new, right? So the idea of finding benefits for 6 hour plus, 8 hour plus, 10 hour, 100 hour plus energy storage is very new for a lot of markets. And that's the case in the Netherlands. I would like to invite Ms. Emma, and I think we're just asking now from the perspective of the Dutch grid operator, which is Sedin, which is kind of like the TSO in the Netherlands. I really want to know what system changes are currently being made, offshooting from the rising renewable energy penetration, grid congestions, electrification goals, climate ambitions, and the whole salad bowl of the commitments to make sure energy transition is achieved. But what has made this the right moment for the Netherlands to actually explore LDES? And you can talk about kind of the role of energy storage, specifically in the Dutch system planning system, because it's been a very relative market for the Netherlands, and we're really excited to see that come live. So it'd be nice to hear from you, Emma, on what's happening in the Netherlands and how LDES is becoming strongly participant.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So Stedin is a district system operator for about a third of the Netherlands. And the Netherlands in recent years has seen rapid electrification, especially of household heating, which was done with natural gas traditionally, as well as a rising number of electric vehicles and electrification of our industry. And in addition to that, we are closing down our natural gas fields that we have in the Netherlands. So electrification is especially important for us. And on the generation side, there is a rising renewables penetration. So about 50% of our electricity is from renewable sources today, although electricity is only 30% of our total energy usage. And I think pumped hydro storage was mentioned a couple of times, but just to paint a picture for you, our highest mountain in the Netherlands is only 300 meters high. So unfortunately, pumped hydro is not really an option for us as long duration energy storage. Luckily, we are very well connected with the rest of Europe, so we do benefit from the hydropower, for example, in Norway or in Germany. But for storage, we are really reliant on anything we can develop on land without great height differences. Recently, the high penetration of renewable energy and the electrification of energy demand has led to a lot of grid congestion in the Netherlands. So in most parts of the Netherlands, if you ask for a new connection to the grid now, you will have to wait for 5 to 10 years before you can actually get that connection, which has an enormous impact on building new houses, on our economy, on companies that want to electrify, that want to be more sustainable. So it's a real problem. We've been trying to solve this as a grid operator by putting flex tenders into the market. So to ask the market, hey, we have this problem, we have congestion periods where the capacity of our grid is exceeded for periods of up to 35 hours. And so far, we have done 3 of these flex tenders in Stedin. And we see that the ones where we have problems with a shorter duration, they are solved by batteries. And we had one where there were problems with a longer duration, and there, unfortunately, we had to place mobile gas generators. But of course, we would love to solve this problem using LDES, using energy storage, to actually take a step forward in the energy transition instead of having to take a small step back and use more gas generators. And what we really want to work up to, instead of having these tenders come out one by one, is to make a longer term planning of this so that market parties can also have a more predictable revenue and see it as a real revenue stream that they can count on. And in system planning, I think you also asked, previously we really didn't take energy storage into account in our system planning at all. The previous couple of years, we have taken batteries into account more and more. But last year was the first update of the Dutch grid operators planning, where LDES was actually in the report and was taken into account. So I think that was a really good step.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Emma. And yeah, we're super staying close to what's happening in the Netherlands and on the use of diversity for elders. So the second half of our questions now are actually going to be looking on the diversity on technology and then also how. So we're speaking on policy and revenue, and the next half is going to be looking at technologies and how revenue is actually being made, and also what makes these technologies actually bankable. So the technologies are ready to scale today, but then how are different regions making sure that the technologies are bankable, seeing that we're in a very new and quite tricky new industry, but a necessary one to make sure electrification is achieved across board. I'm just going to move to President Harris now. So President Harris, we've moved beyond demonstration stage as many technologies are ready to be deployed, like I mentioned. And New York has been a regional leader for energy storage, like you've highlighted with existing demonstrations funds and innovation funds. But there's a growing, I guess, a moving consensus that scaling elders would depend less on subsidies and grants, which we've previously seen in the case. What steps, is the state of New York taking to create that long-term investment certainty needed to unlock capital for elders? And is this done through, I mean, you mentioned the procurement frameworks, but are there also some market reform instruments? Are they institutions like the New York Green Bank also participating in the investment certainty conversation for energy storage, particularly elders?
Yes, I think this is a really important combination of activities that are necessary to really unlock capital, as you just described it. I'd like to touch really on 4 areas briefly. We're really addressing this challenge through a combination of procurement frameworks, market reforms, and institutional financing tools, foundationally making sure that these resources are properly valued within the system. So the first, establishing revenue certainty. We do have a procurement framework executed via NYSERDA for index storage credits. And we have a 20% procurement target for 8+ hour resources as part of that procurement. And so the index storage credit is a bit like a contract for differences that are utilized in generation projects, but this is a revenue hedge essentially that's indexed to the energy arbitrage and capacity revenue that a project is expected to realize. It also provides a long-term contract. It's 25-year contracts so that it will help developers secure lower cost financing and attract private capital. Our first solicitation actually has yielded a number of non-lithium ion projects ranging from electrochemical and mechanical technologies. So that is available on our website. And we're also just looking to evolve this given the evolution of the technologies over time. Second, on evolving market rules, as I mentioned, we've implemented the marginal capacity accreditation approach, which more accurately reflects the reliability contributions of different resources in the capacity market. Foundationally, really looking at how long different technologies can sustain output during reliability events. So longer duration resources receive higher reliability value where appropriate and allows them to earn more market revenue. Obviously, this is evolving over time, but I would say this is an important start. And then third, bridging financial gaps. We are supporting market development through institutions like our New York Green Bank, which is a $2+ billion financial instrument, and bridging financing gaps for emerging technologies. And so we are committed. In fact, recently the New York Green Bank committed $50 million to support Soltage in building a large portfolio of distributed generation assets, including various energy storage systems in New York City. More to come, certainly, but ultimately we see the installed storage capacity continuing to build in New York City because of the values that it provides. And of course, our commitment to a larger pool of capital supported with other lenders is really central to realizing that. And then I think last, I'd really like to say we continue to invest in the innovation pipeline needed to advance these emerging storage technologies. Our innovation and research portfolio is over $100 million per year, and it is focused on storage as one major central component of our broader flexibility toolkit. We're leveraging LDES to modernize aging infrastructure and lower costs for consumers. And for all the reasons you're hearing from each of us today, the ability to site these projects in locations that really need otherwise multi-billion-dollar investments in new transmission or distribution lines add a lot of value. So that's occurring both at NYSERDA and within our regulator to really unlock innovation and investment to deploy these resources. So more to come, but it's really part of a broader strategy aligning planning, procurement, and market design so that these assets can be competitive and valued for the reliability that they provide.
Yeah, thank you so much, President Harris. More to come indeed. I think on the theme of, looking ahead, Emma, I just want to go back to you real quick. So my next ask is, you mentioned 2025 last year was the first time that LDES was actually reflected in the Netherlands system planning. But as the Dutch operating system in Netherlands moves forward with this newly announced renewal flex research for LDES, if you can share briefly a bit more about that. How are the electricity markets design changes actually helping enhance participation? So you've mentioned the range of different technologies that beyond pumped hydro storage that the Netherlands is looking at, but what is the most critical change right now? I want to reference investment certainty, but whatever else comes to mind, to enable LDES actually scale and participate effectively in the Netherlands, much like we're seeing in other regions like the state of New York.
So you mentioned the Renewable Flex NL project. This is a project that we are participating in, as a grid operator, but we're doing it together with some companies that will look at market structures and regulation, and also with a few companies that actually produce long-duration energy storage technology. So there will be 3 real-life projects that will be undertaken. One is in our grid area in Rotterdam, which has the biggest harbor in all of Europe. And there we will develop long-duration energy storage to match the energy from wind coming in from sea and the energy usage in the harbor of Rotterdam. So I think they will be really interesting. But at the same time, we want to move beyond single projects and beyond especially pilot projects. So that's why part of this project is looking at models for these long-duration energy storage to get a good business case in the Netherlands. And there are 2 things in particular that we will be looking at. So one of them is capacity mechanisms. At this moment, the Netherlands has an energy-only market. So there are no capacity mechanisms in place. But if we have a period with low solar energy, low wind energy, and high demand, we will still need energy and capacity to be there. And our government, we just have a new government for a couple of months, and they are also very enthusiastic about this exploring capacity mechanisms. And we are at the same time also looking at other ways to fund long duration energy storage. So these are, for example, the flex tenders I've mentioned before, where we as grid operators invest in long duration energy storage through market parties. But we're also exploring things like cap and floor mechanisms that we have seen in different European countries and be very successful.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to how this plays out for the Netherlands. And yeah, the idea of having a lessons learned approach is super necessary because a lot of markets are obviously navigating changes in their system needs, like you mentioned, capacity mechanisms, which could be vital to make sure that investors have clearer revenue structure for where you're kind of where you're putting their money where your mouth is, but also for the market to know when is the best time to price and kind of get your money back too. That scenario in Netherlands could be completely different to what's happening in India. So, Nimel, I'm going to go back to you and kind of speak to what you've mentioned about the different states having their different priorities, but also more extensively towards public support mechanisms that the Indian government has put into place to support elders. And as the sector enhances and grows at state level and national level, what additional steps are you seeing happening in India to make sure these elders projects, from Gujarat, which, like you rightly mentioned, the elders council supported on the most recent tender for 8 hour plus duration. But what steps is being taken to make sure elders in India is fully bankable, particularly in terms of revenue certainty, the contract design. So we've mentioned the cap and floor mechanisms, which exist currently in the UK. And then what kind of risk allocations for elders technologies are also being considered?
Yeah, so a bit different the way how the market structure in India is because while we don't have a capacity market, almost all capacity or more than 90% of capacity is tied up through long-term PPAs or contracts. So a capacity which is tied up through contract, of course, does not have a revenue risk, but from an off-taker perspective, as a utility or a distribution utility who's getting into this contract, there aren't enough monetizable means for them to actually recover or value LDES, right? The only one currently is the arbitrage opportunity, which is again limited to the short duration period, right? So India's peaks are typically for 2 to 4 hours. So that is where a lot of points around resource adequacy comes in, capacity credits for providing firm power for longer periods. That's where a lot of evolution needs to come in, right? So the first is that LDES needs to be defined. There is no current definition of what long duration energy storage means in the Indian context. And then how do you value it when you look at planning, right? So as mandates, all states need to come out with their resource adequacy plans, but those plans only consider BESS and pump storage because that is the only technology the states know, right? So the modeling frameworks need to evolve, the technology costs, how the technology cost curves would be in the future. Those are, again, points that inputs that need to come in. And then there's a lot of value now being placed on localization, right? Or indigenization of the technology. How much of the technology, from the materials, the components can be localized in India. That is going to also be a big play because even in short duration storage, we are seeing that the government had come out of the viability gap funding. And in their latest tranche, they have included some components of indigenization, right? So things like the BMS, the EMS needs to be indigenous because, of course, lithium batteries come from China. But for long duration, there is a bigger push and there's the realization that, we need the supply chain, at least a significant portion needs to be indigenized in India, right? So that's where the direction is. Of course, it will take some time, but there is serious thought happening at the central level, at the state level. So hopefully we'll see a couple of tenders come out in the next 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. I guess the audience have heard a lot of hours being kind of moved around the different regions, but I guess at the Elders Council we define long duration energy storage as 8 hour plus, but we do recognize that different regions, states across the world are at their own pace, but also getting to that in a very significant manner. Yeah, like President Harris mentioned, it's 10 hour in the state of New York, but also Gujarat was then looking at the 8 hour duration, even if they've had a 4 and 2 previously. So it's really exciting times. And I think what's super important is that diversity in technology. And I like the fact that you spoke on the supply chain conversation. I think that's going to have to be a separate webinar because we're currently, with the global situation at the moment, we're currently looking at how to make sure a lot of the LDES technologies, which majority of them can be locally manufactured. But again, technology reference. And if anyone has questions about that, please reach out to us at the council or check our website for more identification on how the different LDES technologies can participate locally and can be manufactured locally as well. I'm going to pass now to the last question today to Dr. Dana, who I'm hoping is going to be a good way to wrap up what we've seen happening in the state of New York, which is heavily advanced in the Americas, what's happening in the Netherlands, kind of like looking at the new future for electrification and energy system planning, and even to states like India, which presumably would not have even been expected to have had a lot of like foresight on elders, but does. So it's a very good example for activation markets. Dr. Dana, so I'm gonna go back to regulatory clarity for bankability for elders. And with storage now being recognized as an autonomous activity with clearer rules in the recently announced participation scheme that you listed out for us, how do you see Brazil transition from kind of what's been before to making sure we have investment confidence with this new policy that's been put out? And how does this affect the local industries for Brazil when we kind of position storage technologies? And as well, that Brazil is I don't know, a staple child, if you like, for Latin America as the largest electricity market. But what kind of investors' confidence, is that market currently seeing around energy storage and particularly elders?
Okay. Well, I think the market is expecting for the regulation for sure, but the law, which was approved last year, gave some important signs in the direction of bankability of and the viability of the investment in the country. So I must say the law approved a kind of incentive cap. So from 2026 to 2030, there will be a kind of incentive taxes for the investors, and I think that that's a good sign for everybody. And more, it reduces the tariff to import equipment to 0%. So it's another important signal that we send to the market. And also the regulatory discussion was pointing the direction to remove barriers for the storage system. So it means the storage can provide auxiliary services, can provide arbitrage, can trade energy. So that's some important signals for all the market. The Brazilian government is also structuring a capacity reserve auction. It's not defined when to go on. The Ministry of Mines and Energy is in charge of that, and you will contribute with the organization of the auction when it will be demanded. But the end of the last year, it was published a kind of ordinance, and it was put in a public consultation. There was set some technical requirements. I can say that, the system will have to operate at a minimum of 4 hours for discharging. It must have an efficiency of 85% round trip, and it must recharge in a maximum of 6 hours, and the minimal capacity of the system would have to be in 30 megawatt. So that's that. I'm not sure if it will finish or the ministry will approve the ordinance as they proposed at the beginning of the public consultation. And let's see, all the market is expecting that to happen in the first semester. Let's see. We are collaborating with them, and we are expecting a lot that it happens early, because it will help our market to develop a lot. At this very moment, batteries or storage systems is not integrated in the grid as we wanted and we had to, but I'm sure we will develop very fast the market when we conclude that first set of rules and this auction comes.
Well, we're looking forward to that, audience. We've seen Brazil kind of take action in due time. So yeah, please do keep us posted on how that moves forward. Yeah, with that, I mean, just perfect timing. We're done with the fireside chat, and I've seen that there's some questions in the Dropbox here in the Q&A. And please, if you still have any questions, do drop them in the chat. President Harris has left us at this moment, but if there are any questions for her, we'll be happy to obviously like extend them over, or at the same time, the LDES Council does have regular webinars like these. So please stay in touch with us on LinkedIn, as well as IRENA as well, and Reta, which is also positioning for more capacity development questions on the long duration energy storage. So thank you so much to my fireside speakers from Netherlands, Brazil, the state of New York, and India. Appreciate your insight. I have learned so much from the markets, even beyond. And I guess, like Francisco, that's the same case for you. We're now just going to give it a minute or two for people to drop their questions in the chat, and we will just have a moderated Q&A. Thank you so much for all the speakers. Again, I see some questions dropping in. So Francesco, maybe we can start allocating these.
Much, Gosha, and thank you very much for our speakers. It's very satisfying, I say, and encouraging to see that the role of long duration storage is being widely recognized, or the relevance, that the countries are looking for solutions as they see the importance and the relevance. So there's this search for implementing solutions and to make this feasible. Because of time constraints, we may have to select just a few questions. I have one questions for the audience in general. Maybe I would like to read it, and if there's any volunteer between our speakers to respond, welcome the reply. One of them is, do you see advantages in China? But I will not mention China itself, but in more centrally coordinated market approaches for enabling long duration energy storage compared to liberalized markets. Is like any one of the speakers would like to comment on this? Perhaps perhaps maybe, or maybe you can elaborate on what difference, or what could be an advantage of a centralized versus a decentralized. I don't know, anyone?
I can take a small step.
Thank you.
No, sorry, Daniel, please go ahead.
No, thank you. Oh, please go ahead. Yeah.
Go near mouth. I would comment about our system. We operate in a centralized system, and I see advantages on that. I'm not sure if it's a barrier for the LDES, but I think all the technologies have space when we need this kind of flexibility. So independent of being centralized or more liberalized in terms of operation, I think both of technologies, small durations or long duration energy storage have space in the market.
Yeah, I'll just add in a bit, at least from my perspective. I think from a liberalized market, I mean, you're relying a lot more on, your various market mechanisms and merchant revenue streams, right? If those aren't evolved enough to support long duration energy storage, especially because the asset class is still at a very nascent stage, you will, of course, uh, as an LDS OEM or a provider, you may not find the space in order to, set up your technology. Your revenue streams may not be clear. Where a centralized mechanism helps is that because the need for LDS can come out from, system planning and resource adequacy and IRPs, then you can come out with specific, procurement mechanisms just for longer duration storage, which is already valued, right? So that is probably a difference, which then helps adoption of LDS. But again, there are pros and cons of either market type. So I don't want to strongly push for any.
And Francisco, this is Julia. I can help on some of the China question. China just released their 15th five-year plan, and in their five-year plan, it does call out long duration energy storage as a key component to helping with the enormous amount of growth, not just in renewables, but of customers and decarbonization. And I think this is actually really exciting to see just because of the market changes in China, both with the states and the federal government, but also just looking at the growth and scale, moving from smaller projects at 200 megawatt hours to 500 megawatt hours, just because of the need is there. And so it is exciting to see just how much support in the market, but also with the different stakeholders to really kind of help, again, align the expedited importance of deploying long duration storage at scale. So we will be seeing a lot more out of China for market growth and deployment.
I think that in the interest of time, we can close this part here. I really want to thank you again, everybody. For closing, I will give you the floor, Julia. From my side and from IRENA's side, thank you very much for all the speakers and for all the participants for this very interesting dialogue.
Thank you, Francesco. I think it's been amazing to hear from everybody about the common themes that have arisen. I mean, it's great to see Rita showcase, the need and just the opportunity to help support regulators around the world with various policy initiatives and to really kind of build out those five pillars that we heard about. In New York, we've heard about, how do you incorporate planning and procurement and collaboration to really make sure that you're guiding, the stakeholders and the operators to deploy more energy storage, especially long duration storage. In India, you heard about, the public-private partnerships and the enormous need for long duration storage, but how to really bring the states and federal government together, bringing out the example in Gujarat. And in Brazil, hearing about the tariff changes, today even hearing policy changes to affect the market and the real-time discussions to address the needs at hand. And Netherlands, you heard about the real strong push for electrification and just with the different geography constraints, being able to pull off the interconnected system, but at the same time, working through from various types of congestion and how to see long duration energy storage as a tool. Really excited to hear about the flex tenders, about the green banks, about the different types of revenue hedges that provide the revenue certainty for long duration energy storage, whether it was cap and floor examples or CFDs. We're also hearing about the 20-year contracts, 25-year contracts to again provide that certainty, which is so key. The predictability is essential, and I think what we've also heard about is that capacity credit discussion in India and in Brazil, just again, the collaboration of the different players are so important. And I think what we're really, kind of elevating again was just the importance from the global partners that are on this call, highlighting there is this need for long duration storage. We heard Simon at the very beginning point to where it's deployed and how it's addressing, the various types of diversity of technology needs. We have the technology, we just need the policies and the market certainty to really deploy at scale so we can get all the benefits. So I just wanted to again say thank you to everyone, to Ulsa and to the team and to IRENA to really bringing this conversation together in the part 2 of the webinar series to highlight again the critical importance of really having the public-private partnership and having the right policies in place to really strengthen our infrastructure systems, whether you're on the grid, whether you're off the grid, you're on an island, rural community, urban community, all need long duration energy storage, and that we're setting up the tools to make this a success. So thank you all again so very much. Really appreciate your time and commitment. Look forward to ongoing dialogue and to more policies implemented to support the growth of long duration storage. So thank you, Francesco. Thank you to IRENA, and back over to you.
Thank you so much, Julia.
We will put the recording of the webinar online. Also, we will ask for the first one of the series. So we will also, or this one is already there. We share all the answers. We share the link. And we hope to see you on our next webinar. Yeah, Gosha, to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Francisco. Yeah, we're looking forward to the 3 out of 3 coming soon. And the links for the previous one will be shared as well. I just really want to mention that because there's been some ask about like the LDES Council. We have some incredible reports currently out, so please do check our website. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, do reach out to us and we'll be able to share the amazing use cases already existing, the technologies already existing, the market mechanisms that we're suggesting, the bankability criteria that needs to be put into place, the cost benchmarking for elder solutions, and an upcoming one for a case study on another state in the America, which will be great to analyze and see how the market for elders is being built. Yeah, so just right on the clock. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time this morning, afternoon, and late evening in India. Appreciate you all staying on and look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.